After selling my company, I bought my dream beach house to finally relax. On the very first night, my daughter-in-law called me. "Eleanor, you need to move into the guest room. We're bringing my entire family over to stay for a few days. If you don't like it, they say there's a motel down the street." I stood there in silence, speechless. But that same week, I prepared a surprise that wiped the smiles off their faces in a second. The first night in my new house, I woke up to the sound of waves crashing against the rocks. It was a sound I had waited 42 years to hear. 42 years of sewing, of negotiating deals, of waking up at 4 in the morning to go over orders. 42 years of building a textile empire with these hands, which now trembled with emotion as they held a coffee mug on the terrace. I am 68 years old. 68 years of surviving, not living. And finally, after selling my company for $7 million, I had bought this piece of heaven on the Pacific coast. A 3-story house with enormous bay windows that let in the golden light of the sunset, sand-colored walls, hardwood floors that creaked with warmth, and that smell of salt and freedom that had never felt like it was mine. That night, as I was making a simple dinner in my brand-new kitchen, so different from the tiny little room where I used to boil canned soup for 3 hungry children, my phone rang. It was Michael, my oldest son. I felt that warmth in my chest that only a mother knows. "Mom, congratulations again on the house. Jessica wants to say hi." He didn't give me time to answer. I heard my daughter-in-law's voice on the other end, that sweet tone that always put my teeth on edge. "Eleanor, honey, how exciting that you're all settled in. Listen, I'm calling because Michael and I want to come over tomorrow with my entire family to see the house. It's just for a few days, a week at most, so I need you to clear out the master bedroom and move into the guest room. There are 11 of us coming, and we need the space. If that's a problem, Michael saw a motel down the street. I think they have rooms available." The world stopped. The waves kept crashing outside, but inside me, something much deeper fractured. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there with the phone pressed to my ear, listening to the silence that followed her words. A silence so heavy it almost suffocated me. "Mom, are you there?" Michael asked from the background. "Yes, I'm here," I whispered. Jessica let out a light laugh, as if she had just asked to borrow a sweater. "Perfect. Then we'll see you tomorrow, around 10. I'll bring breakfast." "Well, you'll make it, right? You know how Michael likes his eggs." She hung up. I stood there in the middle of that immense kitchen, the lights reflecting off the white tiles I had chosen so carefully. My hand was still holding the phone. My breathing was short, shallow, as if someone had just punched me in the gut. 11 people? In my house? The house I bought with the money from my company? The company I built from scratch after my husband died and left me alone with 3 kids and a $20,000 debt? I closed my eyes. I was 34 years old again. I was back at that rusty sewing machine, with Michael sleeping in a cardboard box because we didn't have a crib. I felt the pain in my fingers again after sewing for 18 hours straight. I heard the voice of the elementary school principal telling me, "Ma'am, if you don't pay the tuition, Michael can't stay." Michael, my firstborn. The one who never cried from hunger because I skipped meals so he could have milk. The one who was able to study engineering because I worked 3 jobs at the same time. The one who now, on the other end of the phone, stayed silent while his wife kicked me out of my own bedroom. I couldn't sleep that night. I sat on the terrace, watching the dark sea, feeling the cold wind hit my face. And for the first time in decades, I wondered if everything I had built was worth it. Because this house wasn't just a house, it was my reward. It was the proof that I had survived, that I had won, that finally, after a lifetime of giving myself to others, I could give something to myself. And in a single phone call, they were taking it away from me. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't even imagine, was that I hadn't gotten this far by being a woman who just gives in. And although I felt something in me break that night, I also felt something older, stronger, more dangerous, beginning to awaken. Because I didn't build an empire by being naive, and what was about to happen was going to remind them exactly who I am. If this story hooked you from the first second, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss how this woman got her dignity back. What she did next will leave you speechless. They arrived at 9 in the morning, an hour earlier than they said they would. I was still in my pajamas, my hair thrown up in a messy ponytail, when I heard the crunch of tires on the gravel of my driveway. Not one SUV. Three enormous SUVs that completely blocked access to my garage. I peeked out the second-floor window and watched them get out as if it were a military invasion. Arthur, Jessica's father, was the first. A man in his 60s with a prominent belly, dark sunglasses, and an air of ownership that chilled my blood. Behind him came his wife, Sharon, carrying grocery bags. Then came Jessica's siblings, Brittany, a 35-year-old woman in ripped jeans and shiny fake nails, and Kyle, a guy who never took his eyes off his phone. Then came the nephews, 4 kids screaming and running straight for the beach without so much as a hello. And finally, an elderly aunt with a cane and a sour face. 11 people. 11 strangers entering my sanctuary as if it were a roadside hotel. Jessica was the last to get out. She was wearing a white linen dress, gold sandals, and Hollywood-style sunglasses. She saw me from below and waved, as if we were friends at a luxury resort. "Eleanor, did you make coffee yet? We're all starving." Michael was behind her, carrying suitcases. Our eyes met for a second, just 1 second, and in that instant, I saw something that shattered me more than any word: shame. My son felt shame, but not enough to stop this. I walked down the stairs slowly, still in my pajamas, still not understanding how I had lost control of my own life in less than 24 hours. Arthur was already inside, walking through my living room as if he were assessing a property for sale. "Nice house, ma'am." "What did you say your name was?" he asked, without looking at me. "Eleanor," I answered in the firmest voice I could manage. "Ah, right, Eleanor. Look, it has a good layout, but that armchair over there." He pointed to my favorite armchair, the gray velvet one I'd bought at an antique shop. "It clashes with the view. You should replace it." I didn't answer. I just watched him as he kept walking, opening doors, peeking into rooms that didn't belong to him. Jessica swept into the kitchen like a perfumed hurricane and started taking things out of the bags. "Eleanor, I need you to tell me where you keep the big pots. I'm going to make a big pancake breakfast for everyone." "Oh, and I reorganized your pantry a bit." It was a total mess. I opened the pantry door. Sure enough, my things were no longer where I had left them. The spice jars I had arranged by color were now stacked haphazardly. The teacups I inherited from my mother were moved to a higher shelf I could barely reach. "Jessica, I didn't ask you to." "Don't worry, Eleanor. It's just to make things more practical. Now that we're going to be here, we need the kitchen to be efficient." "We're going to be here," as if it were already a done deal. Michael came in carrying more suitcases. He went up and down the stairs without a word, like an obedient employee. At some point, our eyes met again. I opened my mouth to speak, but he looked away and kept climbing. The children were already running all over the house. One of them knocked over a ceramic vase that cost me $300. It shattered against the hardwood floor. No one said a thing. Brittany, Jessica's sister, didn't even look up from her phone. "Mom, where do I put Aunt Agnes's things?" Kyle asked. "In the master bedroom," Jessica replied without hesitation. "It's the biggest one and has a private bathroom. She has hip problems. She needs to be comfortable." My room, my master bedroom, the one with a direct view of the ocean, the one I had furnished with Egyptian cotton sheets and ivory-colored curtains, the room where I thought I would finally wake up in peace. That's my room," I said, almost in a whisper. Jessica turned to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, Eleanor, we talked about this last night. You'll be perfectly fine in the guest room. Besides, it's just for a few days." A few days. That was the first of many lies. At lunchtime, my table was filled with people I didn't know. Arthur presided at the head of the table as if it were his house. Sharon served the pancakes onto my plates. The kids were screaming. Brittany was taking selfies with the ocean in the background. And Michael. Michael ate in silence, his eyes fixed on his plate. In the middle of the noise, Jessica dropped the bomb. "Well, family, I have something to tell you. I talked to Michael, and we decided that instead of staying for a week, we'll stay for 3. After all, the house has plenty of space, and my mother-in-law is all alone. Right, Eleanor? It's better this way. We can keep each other company. 3 weeks. The fork slipped from my hand and clattered onto the plate with a metallic sound that no one else seemed to hear. I looked for Michael's eyes. This time, he didn't look away. But what I saw there was worse than indifference. It was resignation, as if he too were a prisoner in my own house. "Mom, it's just," he started to say. But Jessica cut him off. "Your mom is happy, sweetie. Right, Eleanor? Look how lovely. The whole family together." I said nothing. I just got up from the table, walked up the stairs, and locked myself in the guest room. A small room with no ocean view, with a single bed that creaked. I sat on the edge and took a deep breath. 42 years of work, $7 million. And I was sleeping in the smallest room in my own house. That night, I heard laughter from the terrace, music, the clinking of glasses. They were celebrating. On my terrace, with my wine, in my house, and I was alone, in the dark, wondering at what point I had stopped being the owner of my own life. But one thing was clear. This was just the beginning. And though I didn't know it yet, the worst was yet to come. On the third day, I discovered that Arthur had turned my study into his personal office. That study was my sacred space. The only room in the house I had designed thinking only of myself. Floor-to-ceiling windows with a direct view of the horizon, a walnut desk I had custom-made, and a library filled with books I had collected over the years. It was the place where I planned to read, to write, maybe to learn to paint. It was my refuge. When I opened the door that morning, I found Arthur sitting in my chair, his feet up on my desk, shouting into his phone. "I'm telling you, that land is worth double. If you don't close the deal today, I'm walking." Yes, email me the papers. Give me the address." He saw me standing in the doorway and didn't even put his feet down. "Okay, write this down. 47 Serenity Point. Yes, under the name Arthur Landeros." He used my address for his shady business deals. "Arthur, this is my study." He held up a finger, asking me to wait, as if I were an employee interrupting an important meeting. He continued talking on the phone for another 5 minutes. When he finally hung up, he looked at me as if he'd just noticed I was there. "Ah, ma'am, it was. Eleanor?" "Eleanor," I corrected. "Right. Look, I need to use this space. I have important business to conduct, and it's too noisy downstairs with the kids. You understand? But this is my ma'am. Don't be selfish. Besides, what do you need such a big office for anyway? With all due respect, at your age, you're not going to start working again, are you?" I felt rage rise in my throat like bitter bile, but before I could answer, he was already dialing another number, turning his back on me. I closed the door and stood in the hallway, trembling. Not from fear, from fury. But the worst came later. That same afternoon, Jessica decided to reorganize my kitchen. I walked in to find all my pots, pans, and dishes piled on the floor. She was standing in front of the open cabinets, hands on her hips, analyzing. "Oh, Eleanor, good, you're here. Look, your kitchen is so disorganized, no one can find anything. So I decided to arrange it the way it should be." "Jessica, I already had it arranged." "Yes, but not functionally. For example, why do you have the soup bowls on the top shelf? Those get used the most. And these china teacups? No one uses these anymore, Eleanor. I'll just pack them away in a box. Those cups belong to my mother. They were the only things I had left of hers. No, you don't touch those." Jessica looked at me with a condescending smile, the kind adults use on stubborn children. "Oh, Eleanor, don't be so sentimental. They're just cups. Besides, look, I bought some new ones that are much more modern." She pulled a set of plastic mugs out of a bag, cheap plastic with tacky, colorful flowers. "I got them at the supermarket nearby. I charged them to your account. I hope you don't mind. Oh, and while I was there, I bought groceries for the whole family. It came out to about $1,500. But, well, you have the money, right? That's what you sold your company for. $1,500. In 1 week. On food for 11 people I didn't invite." I took a deep breath. I counted to 10. I said nothing. Jessica kept talking as if nothing had happened, arranging my things her way, erasing any trace of me in my own kitchen. That night, I tried to talk to Michael. I found him alone on the terrace, staring at the sea with a beer in his hand. I approached him slowly, as if nearing a frightened animal. "Son." "Mom, please, don't start." "Michael, I can't go on like this. This is my house. I bought it with my money. And your wife." "My wife is being kind. She's helping you." "Helping? Is spending $1,500 without asking helping? Is kicking your own mother out of her room helping?" He turned to me, his eyes tired, as if I were a burden he had been carrying for years. "Mom, you have 5 bedrooms, 5, and you live alone. Don't you think it's selfish to want all this space just for yourself?" The word selfish hit me like a slap. "Selfish," I repeated in a low voice. "I'm selfish? I didn't mean it like that. But look, Jessica and I are just starting out. We have expenses, plans. You've already lived your life, Mom. Now it's our turn. You've already lived your life." Those 5 words pierced my chest like a rusty knife. "I've already lived my life?" I whispered. "Do you really believe that?" Michael sighed. He took another swig of beer and turned his gaze back to the sea. "I'm just asking you to be understanding. It's family. Family." That word, which once meant everything to me, now sounded like a chain. I turned around and went up to my room. The small room, the guest room, in my own house. But that night, while everyone was asleep, I walked past the master bedroom, my room. The door was ajar. I heard voices. It was Jessica, talking on the phone with someone. Her voice was filled with that fake cheerfulness I despised so much. "No, girl, I swear. The house is incredible." I peeked in just enough to see her. She was on a video call, panning the camera around my bedroom as if she were a real estate agent. "Yes, we scored the house for the whole summer. The mother-in-law is super chill. We told her it was just for a week, but we've been here 5 days and she hasn't said a thing." She laughed. That light, carefree laugh of someone who has just gotten their way. "Well, what can you do, girl? She has 5 rooms and lives alone. What does she need so much space for? We actually know how to enjoy things." I kept walking toward my room. I locked the door. I sat on the bed and stared at the ceiling. And for the first time in many years, I felt something I had forgotten. The survival instinct that kept me alive when I was widowed. The instinct that made me build an empire from scratch. The instinct I thought was dormant, but was now waking up with terrifying clarity. Because I didn't get here by letting people walk all over me. And if they thought they could steal my peace, my house, my dignity, they were about to find out who I really was. But not yet. Not yet. First, I needed to understand just how far they were willing to go, and what I discovered next was much worse than I could have ever imagined. On the 10th night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of the sound of the waves, or the heat, or even the rage that had been growing inside me for days like a poisonous weed. I couldn't sleep, because something in my head kept repeating, "This isn't normal. This isn't just inconsiderate. There's something more going on here." It was 3 o'clock in the morning when I went down to the kitchen for a glass of water. The house was silent. Everyone was asleep, everyone except me, wandering like a ghost in my own home. As I passed through the living room, I saw a blue glow. The tablet Michael and Jessica shared was on the coffee table, the screen lit up, forgotten, open. I moved closer. I don't know if it was curiosity or instinct, but something told me to look. And what I saw broke me in two. It was a text conversation between Michael and Jessica, dated 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks before I even bought this house. "Jessica, I already talked to my dad. He says the best thing to do is convince your mom to sign the house over to us while she's alive. That way we avoid problems with your siblings later." My heart stopped beating. "Michael, I don't know, Jess. My mom just bought it. I don't think she'll want to sign it away so quickly." "Jessica, that's the point, sweetie. We have to work on her, little by little. First, we'll stay over for a visit. We make ourselves indispensable. And then my dad can explain the tax benefits of putting it in our names. Your mom doesn't understand that stuff." My hands started to shake. I kept reading. "Michael, What if she says no? Jessica, she's not going to say no. She's your mom. She adores you. Besides, let's be honest, what does she need a house like this for? She's already lived her life. We're just starting out. We have a right to live well, too. She's already lived her life. There it was again. That phrase. As if my life were a spent bank account. I kept scrolling through the conversation. There was more. So much more. Jessica, my dad says we have to act fast before she decides to put the house in all 3 of her kids' names. If she signs it over just to you, your brother and sister can't claim anything. Michael, I feel bad for Clara and Daniel. Jessica, why? They left the country. They abandoned you when you needed them most. You're the one who was here. You deserve that house. A lie. A rotten lie. Clara and Daniel left for work opportunities, with my blessing, with my support. The 3 of us talked every single week. How dare she poison my son's mind like that? But the worst was further down. A message from 5 days ago. Jessica, your mom is already uncomfortable. Perfect. That's the idea. The more uncomfortable she is, the faster she'll want to simplify her life. My dad already has the papers ready. We just need her to sign. And Michael's response? Michael. Okay. Let's do it. The glass of water slipped from my hands and shattered on the floor. The noise echoed through the sleeping house like a gunshot. I stood there, barefoot, surrounded by broken glass, tears streaming uncontrollably down my face. They weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of something more primal. Of betrayal, the kind of pain that can only be inflicted by someone you gave life to. Michael. My Michael. The baby I held in my arms while I sewed with one hand. The little boy I defended when other kids made fun of his worn-out shoes. The young man I hugged when they handed him his college diploma. A piece of paper I paid for with blood and sleepless nights. That Michael was stealing from me? No, worse. He was erasing me, as if I were a nuisance, a pending task, an annoying old woman who had already lived her life and now needed to step aside. I went up the stairs in silence, still barefoot, my face still wet. I passed my room, where Aunt Agnes was snoring. I passed the room where Brittany and her boyfriend were sleeping. I passed the study where Arthur had left his briefcase and documents. And I arrived at the guest room. My room. My prison. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at my hands. These hands that built an empire. These hands that signed million-dollar contracts. These hands that never trembled before any challenge. And in that moment, something inside me died, but something else, something much more dangerous, ignited. I cried all that night. I cried for the naive woman who still believed a mother's love was enough. I cried for the 42 years I spent building a future for children who saw me as an obstacle. I cried for the house I bought with the dream of finally resting, which was now the stage for my own humiliation. But when the sun came up, there were no tears left. There was only clarity. A cold, calculating, relentless clarity. Because I didn't build an empire by being naive. I built it by being smart, by being patient, by being able to see 10 moves ahead while my competitors were only seeing 1. And if Jessica and Michael thought they could play me, they were about to find out that I invented the game. I got up. I washed my face. I dressed carefully. White linen pants, a coral-colored blouse, the pearl necklace I bought when I closed my first big contract. I put on makeup. I did my hair. When I went down for breakfast, everyone was in the kitchen. Jessica was making eggs. Arthur was reading the paper. Michael was staring at his phone. "Good morning," I said with a smile. They all looked at me, surprised. I hadn't smiled in days. "Oh, Eleanor, you look so lovely," Jessica said, without a hint of sincerity. "Thank you, dear. You know, I've been thinking. You're all right. This house is much too big for me alone." Jessica's eyes lit up like a shark smelling blood. "See? I've told Michael that 1,000 times. Yes. So I'm going to make some changes. Important ones." "What kind of changes?" Arthur asked, putting down his newspaper. "You'll see. But I need a few days. I have to take care of some legal matters." Jessica and Arthur exchanged a look of triumph. What they didn't know was that I had also exchanged a look with my reflection in the mirror that morning, and I had made a pact with myself. A pact that was going to change everything. But first, I needed to make a phone call. To the only person I could still trust. I left the house with the excuse of going to the grocery store. I needed air. I needed space to think without feeling their eyes on my back. I drove to the pier and parked facing the ocean. I took out my phone and dialed the number I had saved under Sam. Samantha Aguirre, attorney at law, my lawyer. But more than that, my friend for 30 years. The woman who helped me register my company when it was nothing more than a sewing workshop in my garage. The one who reviewed every contract, every negotiation, every step of my way to the top. She answered on the second ring. "Eleanor, what's wrong? You sound strange." And there, sitting in my car with the windows down and the smell of salt filling my lungs, I told her everything. The surprise arrival, the invasion, the humiliations, the texts on the tablet, the plan to steal my house. There was a long silence when I finished. "That son of a—" Sam didn't finish the sentence. "Do you have proof?" I saw the messages. "Did you take pictures?" No, I was in shock. "It's okay. We'll get something better. Listen to me carefully, Eleanor. Don't say anything. Don't do anything. Act normal. I'm going to investigate this family. Something tells me this isn't the first time they've pulled something like this." "What do you mean?" "Arthur Landeros. That name rings a bell. Give me 24 hours. We hung up. I sat there, watching the waves crash against the rocks with a beautiful, liberating violence. And then, something strange happened. I started to remember. Not the last few days. Not the recent humiliation. I remembered who I was before I became mom, mother-in-law. Ma'am. I remembered Eleanor Vargas at 34, with 3 kids and $0 in the bank. I remembered the first night after my husband's funeral. The empty house. The silence so heavy it was crushing me. Michael sleeping in a box because we'd sold the crib to pay for the burial. Clara and Daniel, still babies, crying for milk we didn't have. I remembered going down to the small workshop my husband never finished. An old sewing machine, scraps of fabric, and a decision. Either I gave up or I fought. I chose to fight. The first few weeks, I sewed school uniforms for the neighborhood elementary school. $5 a pair of pants. I worked 18 hours a day. My fingers bled. Michael would wake up at midnight and find me there, sewing under the yellowish light of a flickering bulb. "Mom, why are you crying?" he asked me once. "I'm not crying, sweetie. I'm just tired." A lie. I was crying because I didn't know if we were going to survive the next week. But we did survive. 1 month, 2 months, 6 months. Within a year, I wasn't just sewing uniforms. I was making communion dresses, prom gowns. I got a reputation for my perfect stitching, for meeting impossible deadlines, for saying yes when other seamstresses said no. After 3 years, I opened my first shop, Vargas Textiles. A simple, honest name. After 5 years, I hired my first 10 employees. After 10 years, I had 3 branches and contracts with department stores. After 20 years, I was a national supplier. After 42 years, I sold my empire for $7 million. 42 years of not giving up. 42 years of saying no to exhaustion, to fear, to defeat. And now? Now I was going to let myself be defeated by a manipulative daughter-in-law and a cowardly son? I started the car and drove back. But not to the house. First, I stopped at the bank. I needed to move some things around, make sure my money was protected. Then I went to the notary's office. I requested certified copies of the deed to my house. I put them in a manila envelope in my glove compartment. And finally, before heading back, I stopped at a coffee shop and ordered a black coffee. Straight up. Bitter. The way I used to like it before everyone told me it wasn't good for my age. My age. As if being 68 turned me into an old piece of furniture that needed to be replaced. I drank that coffee slowly, savoring every sip, remembering every battle I had won. When I got back to the house, it was almost 6 o'clock in the evening. The family was on the terrace, drinking piña coladas and laughing. My wine. My glasses. They saw me arrive and Jessica waved. Eleanor, where have you been? We were starting to think you got lost. I just went to run some errands, I replied calmly. Did you bring anything for dinner? Because we finished all the leftovers from lunch. Of course they had. It was 11 mouths eating as if there were no tomorrow. No, I didn't bring dinner. Jessica frowned, annoyed. Oh, Eleanor. Well, I guess I'll have to order some pizzas. It's going to be about $150, you know. Do whatever you want, I said, heading up the stairs. I heard them murmuring below. Surprised. It wasn't the response they were expecting. That night, lying in my small bed, my phone rang. It was Sam. Eleanor, I have information, and you're not going to like it. Tell me. Arthur Landeros has a clean legal record, but a murky moral one. I found 3 cases in the last 10 years where families accuse him of real estate fraud. He convinces elderly people to sign over properties in exchange for care that never materializes. Then he sells the houses and disappears. They've never been able to prove it legally, but there are complaints. My stomach turned. And Jessica? Jessica Landeros Cruz. This is the good part. She has an active lawsuit against her. $250,000. Pyramid scheme. She convinced several women to invest in a cosmetics business that never existed. It's in litigation. Michael doesn't know. How do you know he doesn't? Because the lawsuit was filed 2 months ago, and Jessica's legal address is her parents', not the apartment she shares with your son. She's been hiding it. I closed my eyes. Everything was making sense. They needed money. A lot of money. And I was the perfect bank. Sam, I need your help. For what? To set a trap. There was a pause. Eleanor Vargas, I thought you'd never ask. Tell me what you need. And there, in that small room that smelled of humidity and defeat, I began to design the most important plan of my life. It wasn't going to be fast. It wasn't going to be easy. But it was going to be perfect. Because I hadn't gotten here by being impulsive. I'd gotten here by being a strategist. And them? They were about to play a game in which I had a 42-year head start. The morning of the 14th day was overcast. Gray. As if the sky knew something was about to break. I was in the kitchen making tea when I heard voices in the living room. Unfamiliar voices, men's voices I didn't recognize. I peeked around the corner carefully. Arthur was sitting in my armchair, the gray velvet one he hated so much, talking to a man in a suit. A leather briefcase rested on my coffee table. Papers were scattered everywhere. So, with this clause, the transfer is exempt from taxes, the man in the suit was saying. It's completely legal. The lady signs the property over to her son while she's alive, and you save yourselves trouble with the IRS and any potential claims from other heirs. My blood ran cold. It was 8 o'clock in the morning, and they had called a notary public to my house. Without my knowledge, I took a step toward them and cleared my throat. They both turned. Arthur didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. Ah, Mrs. Eleanor. Look, this is Mr. Evans. He's a notary. I called him to advise us on how to handle the transfer of your house in the most convenient way. Excuse me? The words came out like ice. The notary stood up, looking uncomfortable. Ma'am, I understand this might seem sudden, but Arthur explained to me that you had already made the decision to sign the property over to your son. I'm just here to formalize the process. I have not made any decision, I said, each word laced with contained fury. Arthur stood up too, with that condescending smirk I knew so well. Now, Eleanor, don't get nervous. It's just a formality. Michael is your son. Eventually, everything will be his. Why complicate things? It's better to do it now, simple and clean. Besides, think of the tax benefits. Get out. What? Get out of my house, you and the notary. Now. Mr. Evans gathered his papers at lightning speed, muttering apologies. Ma'am, I had no idea. I thought it was an arranged matter. Excuse me. He practically ran out. Arthur, however, didn't move. He looked at me with those small, calculating eyes. You're making a mistake, ma'am. My daughter and your son are making life plans together. This house could be the inheritance for your future grandchildren. Don't you want that for your family? My family doesn't include con artists, I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. His expression changed. The friendly mask fell for a second, and I saw what was underneath. Pure contempt. "Be careful what you say, ma'am." "Or what? Are you going to threaten me in my own house?" We held each other's gaze, two animals sizing each other up. It was Jessica who broke the moment. She came down the stairs in a silk robe, yawning. "What's all the shouting about?" "Dad, what happened?" "Nothing, honey. It's just that your mother-in-law doesn't understand that we're trying to help her." "I don't need your help," I said, "and I want you to leave. All of you, today." Jessica looked at me as if I'd spoken in another language. "Leave? Eleanor, you're kidding, right?" "I am not kidding. But we've been here for 2 weeks. You can't just kick us out like this. Besides, where would we go? We had plans to stay until the end of the month." "That is not my problem." Her face changed. The fake sweetness vanished. What was left was something cold, calculating, and dangerous. "I see. So that's how it is. Family, when it's convenient for you, right? When you needed someone to visit while you were building your little company, Michael was there. But now that you have money, you throw us out like dogs." "My little company," I repeated, feeling every muscle in my body tense up, "cost me 42 years of my life. And I am not going to let a con artist—" "Con artist?" Jessica shrieked. "How dare you? $250,000. Pyramid scheme. Does that sound familiar?" The color drained from her face. Who told you that? Does Michael know? Does your husband know that you're being sued? Does he know that the only thing you want from this family is money to pay off your debts? You don't know anything." Her voice was trembling now. "I'm not interested in knowing anything. I want you, your father, your mother, your siblings, and everyone you brought here to get out of my house. You have until 6 o'clock this evening." I turned to go up the stairs, but then I heard her voice. Low, venomous. "If you kick us out, Michael goes with us." I stopped. "What did you say?" "You heard me, Eleanor. Michael is on my side, not yours. If we go, he goes, and he will never speak to you again. Are you willing to lose your son over a selfish old woman's temper tantrum?" Something inside me broke in that moment. It wasn't the threat. It was the word old said with such contempt. As if my age were a disease, as if my 68 years of life, work, and sacrifice were worthless. I turned around slowly. Michael can choose whatever he wants, but this house is mine. And nobody is going to take it from me. I walked up the stairs without looking back. I went into my small room, locked the door, and then I heard something that destroyed me. Michael's voice in the hallway. "What happened? Why are you all yelling?" "Your mother," Jessica said, her voice breaking, playing the perfect victim. "She's kicking us out. She says we're con artists, that we're not welcome, that you have to choose between her and me. Mom did what? You heard me. After everything we've done for her, she treats us like trash." There was a silence, and then the words that sank me deeper than anything else. "All right, we're leaving. Pack everything up. I'm not going to let her treat my wife like that." I heard his footsteps moving away. I heard doors closing. I heard the sound of suitcases being dragged. And I just sat there, on that small bed, feeling the world I had built for 42 years crumble into dust. But a strange thing happened. I didn't cry. There were no tears left. There was only something colder, more lethal. Because in that moment, I understood. Michael had made his choice. And he hadn't chosen me. I took out my phone and called Sam. "Are you ready?" I asked. "I've been ready for days." "Then it's time. Let's do this." "Are you absolutely sure, Eleanor? Because after this, there's no going back." I looked out the window. I saw the suitcases being loaded into the SUVs. I saw Jessica directing everything like a general on a campaign. I saw Michael, my Michael, obeying every order without question. "I'm sure." "Perfect. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock sharp. Bring everyone. We're going to give them the show of their lives." I hung up, and for the first time in 14 days, I smiled. A smile that held no joy, only justice. They left that same afternoon. 11 people, 3 SUVs, suitcases, bags. They even took towels from my bathroom and bottles of wine from my cellar. I watched it all from the second-floor window. Without going down, without saying goodbye, Michael came up once. He knocked on my door. "Mom." I didn't open it. "Mom, please, let's talk." I remained silent, sitting on the bed, my hands on my knees. "Fine," he said finally, his voice heavy with something I couldn't decipher. "If this is what you want, be well." I heard his footsteps walking away. I heard the sound of the SUVs starting. I heard my son leaving my house, my life, choosing a woman who was using him. When the silence returned, I went downstairs. The house was a disaster. Dirty dishes everywhere. Wet towels thrown on the floor. The terrace littered with empty bottles and cigarette butts. Arthur's study, with crumpled papers and cigar ash on my walnut desk. But the house was mine again. I spent that entire night cleaning. Not because I had to, but because I needed to reclaim every inch of my space. To clean not just the physical dirt, but the toxic energy they had left behind. At 2 a.m, with the house finally in order, I made myself a cup of tea and sat on the terrace. The sea was calm. The stars were shining with a clarity I hadn't seen in weeks. I took out my phone and called Clara, my daughter, the middle child, the one who always had my temperament. "Mom, are you okay? It's 2 a.m. here." "I'm not okay," I said, and my voice trembled for the first time. "But I'm going to be. I need to tell you something." I told her everything, from Jessica's first call to the fight that afternoon, the texts on the tablet, the notary, the lawsuit against Jessica, everything. There was a long silence when I finished. "That bitch." Clara took a deep breath. "Mom, why didn't you call us sooner?" "Because I was ashamed." "Ashamed of what?" "Of having raised a son capable of doing this to me. That's not your fault. Michael was always malleable. Dad knew it. I know it. Daniel knows it. That's why Jessica chose him." Those words hurt, but they were true. "What are you going to do?" Clara asked. "Something I should have done from the beginning. Fight back. Count on me. What do you need?" "For now, just your support. And your brother's. Because what's coming is going to be ugly. You've got it. Always." We hung up. I called Daniel next. My youngest son, the quiet one, gave me the same unconditional support. And there, surrounded by the love of 2 of my 3 children, I felt like I could breathe again. The next day, at 9 a.m, Sam arrived. She wasn't alone. She brought a young man with glasses, carrying a laptop. "Eleanor, this is David Chen, a private investigator. He has some information you need to see." We sat in my living room. David opened his laptop and began to show me files, photographs, documents, screenshots. "Arthur Landeros Puga," David began. 63 years old. In the last 15 years, he has been involved in 7 cases of property dispossession. 3 ended in out-of-court settlements. 2 cases expired. 1 is still active. 1 was dismissed for lack of evidence. His modus operandi is always the same. He approaches elderly people, usually widows or widowers with assets, through a close family member. He offers legal help to protect the assets. He ends up with the property. He showed me photos, houses, land deeds, and faces. The faces of elderly people who had lost everything. "This woman," he said, pointing to a photo, "lost her house in Palm Springs. She had lived there for 40 years. Arthur convinced her to put it in her daughter's name, who was married to Arthur's son. 6 months later, the daughter filed for divorce and sold the house. The woman ended up in a nursing home. I felt nauseous. And Jessica?" David switched screens. "Jessica Landeros Cruz, 32 years old. Active lawsuit for $250,000. Pyramid scheme disguised as multi-level marketing. Convinced 17 women to invest between $50,000 and $300,000 each. The business never existed. She used the money to pay personal debts and for luxuries. The lawsuit was filed 4 months ago. Michael is not named in any of the documents. She kept it all separate. Why did she marry my son?" It was Sam who answered. "For you, Eleanor. Your son was the perfect target. An engineer with a stable job, but no great wealth. son of a successful businesswoman. They saw the opportunity and took it. The wedding was 2 years ago, right? I nodded. Right when you closed your biggest contract with Nordstrom. It was in the local business journal. Textile entrepreneur closes $1 million deal. They read it. And they started planning. I leaned back on the sofa, feeling how everything made sense in the most painful way possible, so it was never about Michael. No, said David. It was always about you. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath. What do we do now? Sam smiled. That lawyer's smile I had seen 1,000 times when she was about to win a case. Now we spring the trap, and for that, you need to do something that's going to hurt you a lot. What? You're going to call Michael. You're going to apologize. And you're going to invite them to a reconciliation dinner in 3 days. What? Why? Because we need them to feel safe again, to let their guard down. And then? Then we show them everything we have. They won't come. Michael is furious with me. They'll come, Sam said with certainty, because you're going to tell them exactly what they want to hear. That you've thought things over, that you were confused, that you want to fix everything, with legal documents involved. They'll think they've won. And then? Then we give them the surprise of their lives. David pulled a yellow folder from his briefcase. It's all in here. Proof of Arthur's scams. Documents from the lawsuit against Jessica, and something else I found. He opened the folder. There was a series of printouts from Facebook. Jessica has a private group with her siblings and cousins. It's called Operation Big House. All the messages planning how to convince you to sign over the house are in there. How to manipulate Michael. They even discuss what to do with you after you sign. What? What do they say? David showed me a screenshot. The words were there. Clear. Brutal. Brittany. So what happens after? The old lady is just going to keep living there? Jessica. No. My dad already has a nursing home picked out. It's about $5,000 a month. We can cover that from selling her antique furniture. A nursing home. They were planning to put me in a nursing home after stealing my house. Something inside me hardened into stone. When do we do this? I asked, in a voice I didn't recognize as my own. The day after tomorrow. Saturday at 7 in the evening. Invite them to dinner. Tell them you want to talk about doing things the right way. We'll arrive at 8. And what's going to happen? Sam took my hand. Justice is going to happen, my friend. The good kind. The kind that hurts. That night, I called Michael. It took more out of me than any business negotiation of my life. Son, it's me. Silence. I want to talk. With you and with Jessica. I know I behaved badly. I was confused. Scared. But I want to fix things. Mom, please. One dinner. On Saturday. Just us. And then we can talk calmly about everything. About the house. About the future. About whatever is best for everyone. There was a long pause. Are you serious? Very serious. I'll talk to Jess. Thank you, son. He hung up. 20 minutes later, I received a text from Jessica. We'll be there, Eleanor. Glad you came to your senses. See you Saturday. I put the phone away. Sam was right. They had taken the bait. And I was ready to set the hook. Saturday dawned with a sky so blue it seemed fake. I spent the whole morning preparing dinner. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to keep my hands busy. If I stopped to think too much about what I was about to do, I might lose my nerve. I made a pot roast. Michael's favorite since he was a little boy. The one I made for his birthdays, his graduations, for every important moment of his life. I made it with my mother's recipe, the one that takes 32 ingredients and 3 days of prep. I made it perfectly because I wanted him to remember. I wanted that, when this was all over, he would know exactly what he had lost. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Sam arrived with David and a woman I didn't know. This is Rebecca Stone, Sam introduced her. She specializes in civil fraud. She's here as a legal witness to what's about to happen. Rebecca shook my hand firmly. Mrs. Vargas, what we are doing tonight is completely legal, but I need you to understand that after this, your relationship with your son will change. Maybe forever. Are you sure? I looked out the window. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sea in orange and violet. My relationship with my son has already changed, I said. He made his choice. Now I'm making mine. All right then. Let's proceed. Sam took a portable projector from her briefcase. Where do you want us to set this up? In the dining room. Aim it at the big wall. I want them to have nowhere else to look. They spent the next hour getting everything ready. The projector, the laptop, organized documents, hidden audio recorders. Everything had to be perfect. At 10 minutes to 7, I heard the sound of tires in the driveway. They arrived in a single SUV this time. Just Michael, Jessica, Arthur, and Sharon, the negotiators. I glanced in the hallway mirror before opening the door. I had put on a simple beige dress, the pearl necklace, and discreet makeup. I wanted to look like the sweet mother-in-law they were expecting, submissive, remorseful, easy to manipulate. I opened the door with a smile. Come in, so glad you could make it. Jessica gave me a fake hug, the kind that doesn't really touch you. Oh, Eleanor, we wanted to fix things too. Right, sweetie? Michael nodded uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes. Arthur strode in, as if he'd never left, heading straight for the living room. Smells good, Eleanor. It's pot roast, I said, Michael's favorite. I saw something flicker across my son's face. A flash of nostalgia, of guilt, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. I sat them down in the dining room. I served dinner with my own hands. I used the best glasses, the crystal ones I inherited from my grandmother. I opened a bottle of red wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. Because this was special. Just not in the way they thought. Let's make a toast, I said, raising my glass. To family, to finding solutions, and to doing things the right way. Cheers, they all said, clinking glasses. I barely took a sip. I needed a clear head for what was coming. Dinner proceeded with tense but polite conversation. Jessica talked about their future plans. Arthur mentioned investment opportunities. Sharon complimented the house's decor as if she were appraising it. And Michael? Michael ate in silence, his gaze fixed on his plate, chewing the pot roast I had prepared with so much love and so much rage. At 5 minutes to 8, the doorbell rang. They all turned, surprised. Are you expecting someone else? Jessica asked, a note of alarm in her voice. Yes, I said, standing up. Me lawyers. The color drained from their faces. I opened the door. Sam came in with Rebecca and David, all three dressed formally, carrying briefcases. Good evening, Sam said in a professional tone that allowed for no argument. I am Samantha Aguirre, legal representative for Mrs. Eleanor Vargas. This is Rebecca Stone and private investigator David Chen. Jessica jumped to her feet. What is this? Eleanor, you said we were going to talk as a family. We are going to talk, I replied with a calm I didn't feel. But we're going to do it with everything, with the truth, on the table. I don't understand. Sit down, Sam ordered, please. Something in her voice made them all obey. Even Arthur, who looked like he was calculating if he could make a run for it. David connected the laptop to the projector. The dining room wall lit up. What you are about to see, Rebecca began, is the result of an exhaustive investigation into the true intentions of the Landeros family regarding this property and Mrs. Vargas. The first image that appeared was the text messages, the ones I had seen on the tablet that night. Blown up, clear, undeniable. Jessica, convince your mom to sign the house over to us while she's alive. Michael, I don't know, Jess. My mom just bought it. Jessica, that's the point, sweetie. We have to work on her. Michael went pale. Where did you get that? From your own tablet, I said. The one you left open one night. The next image was worse. Jessica, your mom has already lived her life. We're just starting out. We have a right to live well, too. The silence that followed was so thick you could cut it with a knife. That's taken out of context, Jessica stammered. Really? Asked Sam. Let's see some more context then. Click. Another image, the Facebook group, Operation Big House. The messages appeared one after another on the wall, like a horror movie, but real. Brittany. And the old lady is just going to keep living there? Jessica. No. My dad already has a nursing home picked out. Michael stood up, trembling. No, this can't be real. But there's more, David continued, changing the slide. Arthur Landeros Puga, 63 years old. 7 cases of property dispossession on his record. Here are the victims. Faces appeared on the screen. Elderly people. People who had lost everything. This woman from Palm Springs. This man from Scottsdale. This family from San Diego. All of them lost their homes using the exact same method you attempted to use with Mrs. Vargas. Arthur shot to his feet. "This is slander. I'll sue you." "Go ahead," Rebecca said coldly. "All these documents are public record. They're in the courts. I have the certified copies." "And now for the best part," Sam smiled. Jessica Landeros Cruz, active lawsuit, $250,000. Pyramid scheme. The official court document appeared on the screen. With stamps, with signatures, impossible to deny. Michael turned to his wife. "What is this, Jessica?" I can explain." "Then explain," he shouted, and it was the first time in weeks I had seen fire in his eyes. "Why is there a lawsuit against you that I knew nothing about?" "Sweetie, it's a misunderstanding. $250,000 is not a misunderstanding." 17 women defrauded, David continued. Some lost their life savings. One had to sell her home. Another fell into a depression and was hospitalized. Jessica started to cry, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage, of frustration at being caught. "Michael," I said, and my voice came out firmer than I expected. "Do you understand now? She didn't marry you for love. She married you for my money, for this house. You were just the way to get to me." My son looked at me, and in his eyes I watched everything shatter. His marriage, his trust, his world. "Mom, I didn't know." "I know. That's why you're here. Because I still believe there's something in you worth saving." Jessica stood up, pulling Michael by the arm. "We're leaving. Now, sit down," Rebecca commanded. "We are not finished. We don't have to listen to this." "Yes, you do," said Sam. "Because if you walk out that door right now, tomorrow morning I file a formal complaint for attempted fraud, coercion, and conspiracy to commit dispossession. And believe me, with everything we have, all 3 of you are going straight to jail." That stopped them. Arthur and Jessica exchanged panicked glances. "What? What do you want?" Arthur asked. And that's when I spoke, with all the authority of a woman who built an empire and would not be destroyed. "I want you out of my life. I want you to sign documents renouncing any future claim on my estate. And I want Jessica to tell Michael the truth. All of it. Now. I'm not going to." "Or tomorrow," I said, pointing at the screen. "This is in the DA's hands. You choose." The silence stretched out like an open wound. And then Jessica, the perfect manipulator, finally broke. Jessica slumped into the chair like a puppet whose strings had been cut. "Fine," she whispered. "Fine, I'll tell him everything." Michael was standing, his hands shaking, looking at her as if she were a stranger. "Jess?" She lifted her face. The makeup, streaked by tears, gave her a ghostly appearance. There was nothing left of the sweet, manipulative woman, only a cornered con artist. "We got married because my dad saw the opportunity," she began, her voice cracking. "He saw the article in the business journal about your mom, about her company, about the $1 million contract. He said we had to get close." "Get close?" Michael took a step back as if the words had burned him. I was desperate. The lawsuit was coming. I needed money, a lot of money, and my dad said your family was the solution." "The solution?" My son's voice broke. "I loved you. I introduced you to my mother. I opened up my life to you." "I know," Jessica sobbed. "And at first, that's all it was going to be. Marry you, get close to your mom, get some money. But then she bought this house, and my dad said we could have more. So much more." "The house," I murmured. "It was always about the house." "Yes," she admitted without looking at me. "The plan was to stay here. Make you feel uncomfortable until you agreed to sign over the property. My dad was going to handle the papers, so it would be in Michael's name only." "And after? What happened after?" my son asked, his voice so broken it hurt my soul. "After? We were going to get a divorce. I'd get half in the settlement. We'd sell the house. I'd pay my debts, and we'd go our separate ways. The silence that followed was devastating. Michael swayed, literally as if he'd been physically struck. He grabbed the back of a chair to keep from falling. You never loved me." Jessica didn't answer. And that lack of an answer was the cruelest answer of all. "Son," I started to say, but he held up a hand. "No, Mom, just let me process this." He walked over to the window, turning his back on everyone. I saw his shoulders shake. He was crying. And I, who had planned this moment, who had wanted justice, felt my own heart break seeing my son so destroyed. Arthur tried to stand up. "This is a circus. We're leaving. Nobody moves." Rebecca's voice was sharp as glass. "There are still legal matters to resolve." Sam pulled a folder from her briefcase. "Arthur Landeros, I have documents here linking your legal advice to at least 5 cases of dispossession. I have testimonies. I have bank transfers. I have everything necessary to proceed with criminal charges against you. You can't prove I can, and I will, unless you sign this." She placed a document on the table. "It's a full and absolute waiver of any present or future claim on the estate of Eleanor Vargas or her direct heirs. Furthermore, it's an agreement not to approach her or her family under any circumstances. If you violate it, everything we have goes straight to the district attorney." Arthur read the document, his eyes filled with rage. "This is extortion." "No," I corrected. "This is protection. Sign it, or face the consequences. You decide." He clenched his jaw, took the pen, and signed. With so much anger he almost tore through the paper. "Now you." Sam placed another document in front of Jessica, the same, and in addition, a written admission that your relationship with Michael Vargas was based on deceit for financial gain. This will allow him to initiate divorce proceedings without complications. "I'm not signing that." Then tomorrow morning, I speak with the 17 women who sued you. I give them all this additional information. Your simple fraud case becomes conspiracy and organized crime. That's a minimum of 8 years in prison, Jessica. 8 years. Jessica looked at her father. He averted his gaze. And in that moment, I understood everything. Arthur had used her just as much as she had used Michael. A family of predators. Every man for himself. Jessica signed, with tears of rage, but she signed. "Perfect," said Rebecca. "David, as legal witness, do you confirm these signatures were given without physical coercion?" "I confirm." All parties present were of sound mind and signed voluntarily after being informed of the legal consequences of their actions. "Excellent. Then this is sealed." Sam collected the documents and put them away. "Now you can leave. You have 24 hours to remove any belongings you may have left in this house. After that, if I see you near this property again, I will call the police." Arthur and Sharon stood up without a word. They walked to the door like defeated soldiers. Jessica followed, but before she left, she turned to Michael. I'm sorry. I really go," he said without turning around. He was still staring out the window. "Just go." She left, the door closed, and we were left there. The lawyers, my son, and me. "Michael," I said softly. He finally turned. His eyes were red, his face destroyed. "Mom, you were right. About everything. And I treated you like you were the problem. I kicked you out of your own home. I let them humiliate you. For her. For someone who never loved me." I walked toward him slowly. "Son, I don't deserve for you to forgive me." "Maybe not," I said, and the words came out harder than I intended. "But I'm going to forgive you anyway, because you're my son. And because you made a mistake, not a crime. I almost lost everything because of that mistake. You almost lost me, but you didn't. Because in the end, when you saw the truth, you didn't deny it. You didn't justify it, and that counts." He broke. My 43-year-old son collapsed into my arms like he was 5 and had fallen off his bike. He cried with his whole body, with those deep sobs that come from the soul. And I held him because I'm his mother, and mothers don't know how to stop loving, even when they're broken. Sam and the others left discreetly, leaving us alone. When Michael finally calmed down, we sat on the terrace. The sea was dark, choppy with wind. What am I going to do now? He asked in a hoarse voice. It was all a lie. My marriage, the last 2 years, everything. Now you're going to rebuild, I said. You're going to get a divorce. You're going to go to therapy. You're going to learn to trust again. And you're going to remember who you are. You're Eleanor Vargas's son. And Eleanor Vargas's children do not stay down. He managed a sad smile. Can I stay here tonight? I don't want to go back to that apartment. Not yet. You can stay as long as you need. But in the guest room, the master bedroom is still mine. That small joke broke some of the tension. He laughed. A bitter laugh, but a laugh nonetheless. Understood, Mom. Understood. That night, after Michael went up to bed, I stayed alone on the terrace. I took out my phone and sent a message to Clara and Daniel. It all went well. Your brother is here. He's hurt, but he's going to heal. I love you both. Thank you for believing in me. The replies came almost instantly. Words of love, of support, of real family. And there, sitting under the stars, with the sound of the waves and the weight of 42 years of battles on my shoulders, I understood something. I had won. I hadn't just gotten my house back. I had gotten back my dignity, my strength, my voice. And even though the price was high, even though seeing my son broken hurt me more than anything else, I knew I had done the right thing. Because sometimes, true love isn't about protecting people from pain. It's about protecting them from lies, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. 6 months later, the March sun streamed through my living room windows, painting everything gold, that warm color that only exists on spring mornings, when the world seems to promise you that everything can start over. I was on the terrace, a steaming mug of coffee in my hands, watching the waves draw lace patterns of foam on the sand. I was wearing a mustard-colored linen blouse and white pants. My hair was down, with a few gray strands I no longer bothered to hide. I felt light, as if I had been carrying an elephant on my back for months, and someone had finally lifted it off. I heard footsteps behind me. Morning, Mom. Michael appeared with 2 plates of cut fruit. He looked different. Thinner? Yes. More tired, too. But there was something new in his eyes. Clarity, as if he had finally woken up from a long, confusing dream. Good morning, son. Sleep well? Better than a month ago. Worse than a week ago. I'm getting there. He sat down next to me. He wasn't living with me anymore, of course. After that terrible night, he stayed for 2 weeks in the guest room. Then he found a small apartment near the beach. Something modest. Something he could afford on his engineer's salary without depending on anyone else. The divorce was finalized 3 months ago. Jessica didn't fight it. She couldn't. With all the evidence against her, she signed the papers without a fuss and disappeared. I heard she moved to Houston, far away from the women who sued her, far from the scandal. Arthur vanished too, the victims of his previous scams, armed with the information David had gathered, finally managed to file a class action lawsuit. The last I heard, he was facing trial. I don't know how it will end, but at least he can't hurt anyone else. Mom, Michael said, pulling me from my thoughts, I want to tell you something. Go on. I started therapy, like you suggested. And how's it going? Hard. Really hard. The therapist says I have trouble setting boundaries, that I've always sought external approval instead of building internal self-esteem. She says that's why I was a perfect target for someone like Jessica. I stayed quiet, letting him talk. And we also talked about you. About me? About how I made you my savior. How I always expected you to fix everything. And when you dared to say no to me, to deny me something, I took it as a betrayal. He took a deep breath. I wasn't a good son, Mom. Not these last few years. You were a manipulated son. I was a grown man who chose not to see, who chose what was easy over what was right. He looked me straight in the eye, and I'm sorry. I truly am sorry. I took his hand, I know, and I've already forgiven you. But son, you need to forgive yourself too, because you're going to carry that guilt like a stone in your chest until you learn to let it go. He nodded, tears in his eyes that he no longer tried to hide. I'm working on it. Good. Because I didn't raise a son to spend his life crying over mistakes he can't change. I raised him to learn, to grow, and to move forward. He smiled, a small but genuine smile. You're incredible, Mom. I don't know how you do it. 42 years of practice, son. 42 years. That afternoon, Clara and Daniel arrived. My daughter came from Barcelona with her husband and my 2 grandkids. Daniel came from Toronto with his partner. Seeing them walk through that door, with suitcases and laughter and that beautiful chaos that only real family brings, filled my heart in a way I hadn't felt in months. Grandma, the kids shouted, running toward me with open arms. I hugged them, those warm little bodies, those faces full of innocence, and I thought, this is why it was worth it. This is what I fought for. That night, we all had dinner together on the terrace. I made chili, cornbread, and a key lime pie. The table was full, noisy, alive. Clara helped me serve. In the kitchen, while she warmed up tortillas, she said, "Mom, I'm proud of you, for how you handled everything. A lot of women your age would have just let themselves be steamrolled. But you taught them a lesson they'll never forget." I didn't do it to teach lessons, honey. I did it to survive. Well, you accomplished both. Daniel, who had been listening from the doorway, added, "What you did also helped Michael. I know it sounds harsh, but he needed that reality check. He needed to hit rock bottom so he could start climbing back up." I looked out at the terrace where Michael was playing with my grandkids. He was making them laugh, tossing them in the air. For the first time in a long time, I saw him happy. Not a fake happiness or one dependent on someone else. A happiness that was his own. "I think you're right," I said. "Sometimes, true love is letting people face the consequences of their choices, so they can learn." "Exactly," Clara said, hugging me. "And you taught us that. All 3 of us. That's why Daniel and I are okay. Because you taught us to be independent, to value ourselves, to not depend on anyone else to be happy. And now Michael is learning that too." "Yes, Mom. He's learning." When everyone had gone to bed, I was alone on the terrace again. My favorite place, my sanctuary. I took out my phone and wrote a message in the family group chat we had created after all the drama. "My 3 children are under this roof tonight, and I feel like the richest woman in the world. Not because of the money, not because of the house, but because I finally have what I always wanted, peace." The replies came quickly, heart emojis, words of love, and a message from Michael that made me cry. "Thank you for not giving up on me, Mom. Thank you for teaching me that real love also sets boundaries. I love you more than words can say." I closed my eyes and let the tears flow freely. But they weren't tears of pain, they were tears of liberation. The next day, before everyone left, I did something I had been planning in secret. I gathered them in the living room and took out a folder. "I want to show you something." I opened the folder. Inside were legal documents. 3 months ago, I donated $500,000 to a shelter for elderly women who are victims of family abuse. It's called the Rebirth House. It helps women who have been dispossessed, manipulated, or abandoned by their families. It gives them shelter, food, legal aid, and therapy. My children stared at me, wide-eyed. "Why didn't you tell us?" Clara asked. "Because I didn't do it to show off. I did it because I could have been one of them. If I hadn't had the resources to defend myself, if I hadn't had Sam and the 2 of you, maybe I'd be in a nursing home against my will right now, while someone else enjoyed my house." "Mom." Michael had tears in his eyes. "And I want you all to know that the rest of my estate, when I'm gone, will be divided equally among the 3 of you. There are no favorites, no punishments. You will each receive the same amount. Because I love you all equally. And because I want you to remember that money is just a tool. It doesn't define who you are or what you're worth." Daniel wiped his eyes. "You're the wisest woman I know." I don't know about wise, but I have learned something in these 68 years. Family love isn't bought with inheritances. It's earned with respect, with presence, with actions, not with promises." All 3 of them nodded. And in that moment, looking at them all, I knew I had done the right thing. That afternoon, after saying goodbye to Clara and Daniel at the airport, I came back home. My house. Not Jessica's house. Not the Landeros family's free hotel. Not the prize they wanted to snatch from me. My house. The sanctuary I bought with 42 years of work. The place where I finally learned to say no. The space where I got my voice back. I sat down in my gray velvet armchair, the one Arthur hated, and I smiled, because I had won. I hadn't just reclaimed my property, I had reclaimed something much more valuable: my dignity, my autonomy, my right to live in peace without anyone making me feel selfish for wanting to enjoy what I built. And as the sun set, painting the sky pink and orange, as I listened to the eternal rhythm of the waves, I whispered the words that had sustained me through the darkest moments. I spent 42 years building empires for others. Now, I'm building my own peace. And that, no one could ever take from me. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath. And I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time: freedom. Because I learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means you no longer carry the weight of resentment. I learned that true family is built on respect, not obligation. I learned that saying no doesn't make you selfish, it makes you brave. And I learned that it is never, ever too late to defend what is yours. At 68 years old, I discovered that old age is not synonymous with weakness. It's synonymous with experience, with wisdom, with well-placed boundaries. And anyone who doesn't understand that simply doesn't deserve to be in my will or in my life. If this story touched your heart, if it made you feel anger, hope, or justice, leave me a comment telling me which part impacted you the most. Hit the like button if you think Eleanor did the right thing by defending her dignity. And subscribe to the channel to keep listening to stories of brave women who refuse to be victims. Because true wealth isn't in what you own, but in what you refuse to let anyone take from you. Tell me, where are you watching from? Write your city or country in the comments. I love knowing that these stories are reaching hearts all over the world. See you in the next story. And remember, it's never too late to get your voice back.